Okay, I have 6 o'clock. so I'm going to get started. All right, will the secretary please call the roll?
Ms. Como?
Here.
Dr. Cooper-Stoll?
Here.
Mr. Jimenez?
Here.
Ms. Leahy?
Here.
Mr. Lee?
Here.
Mr. Meyer?
Here.
Mr. Korberg?
Here.
Mr. Spivey? I don't see him on.
I haven't heard he's not going to attend, so
Okay.
we'll say absent for now, and we'll mark it when he joins us.
Okay. And Mr. Turner? And I don't see him on either.
Okay.
Okay.
So same.
Thank you.
So a quorum of the Board of Education is present, so the regularly scheduled meeting of July 6, 2020 is called to order. We'll now have the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all.
Move to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
So a motion has been made by Mr. Korberg and seconded by Ms. Como to approve the agenda that was previously distributed to the board, unless there is a motion to amend. Hearing no motion to amend, we'll have a roll call vote to approve the agenda.
Laura.
Ms. Como? Sorry, I forgot to unmute. Mr. Jimenez?
Aye.
Ms. Leahy?
Aye.
Mr. Lee?
Aye.
Mr. Meyer?
Aye.
Mr. Korberg?
Aye.
Mr. Turner?
Aye.
Dr. Cooper-Stoll?
Aye. Okay, so we will now move to public speakers. We have 2 public speakers registered for this evening. So it's a policy of the board to provide at its public meetings an opportunity for individuals to address the board. Comments about individual staff or personnel will not be allowed. Open meeting law prohibits the board from engaging in discussion or responding to matters not included on the agenda. All speakers are reminded that this same policy limits your time to speak to 5 minutes. This limit will be strictly enforced. May I ask the superintendent to keep track of the time and to notify the speaker when time is running out? Dr. Engel?
I will do so.
Okay, so you're asked to give your name and address at the beginning of your time for the public record. Our first speaker tonight is Steve Corger. I believe Mr. Corger was with us a moment ago.
I did see that he left, and I don't see him on the participants list.
The hang up and mute button are quite close together.
Yes. I don't see him any longer. I'll try emailing him just to see if he fell off.
Okay. All right, then we will move to the second speaker who is registered for this evening, and that is Joella Strebel. So if you would just give us your name and address first, and Dr. Engel, if you'll keep time.
Thank you. My name is Joella Strebel, and I reside at 1712 Liberty Street in La Crosse. Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to speak here tonight. I am an alumni of State Road Elementary, Lincoln Middle School, and Central High Schools, and also the parent of 2 children who currently attend Cooley Montessori at Northside Elementary. I am speaking here tonight as a follow-up to a letter that I sent to all of you on June 16th, encouraging the School Board of La Crosse not to renew the SRO contract with the La Crosse Police Department. I won't rehash my entire letter other than to reiterate that I encourage you to prioritize the marginalized voices that you hear from throughout this process, even if there are fewer of them, as they stand to be the most impacted by decisions made regarding the presence of law enforcement in our schools. In this context, marginalized voices might include the voices of Black, Indigenous, and people of color, both students and parents, disabled students and their parents, and students and parents who are living in poverty or who are unsheltered. Since writing my letter, I've connected with former students of the La Crosse School District and parents of current and former students who've shared some heartbreaking experiences of mistreatment by SROs. All of these involve students who were Black, Indigenous, or people of color, disabled, or both. You may have already received letters from some of these folks. I won't go into great details about their stories. They aren't mine to tell. What I was struck by, though, is how many people who shared their experiences with me were surprised that anyone would care about or believe their stories. From an Indigenous woman who was told by an SRO over 20 years ago that he knew what her kind of people were like and that he was keeping his eye on her and was waiting for her to make one mistake, to Hmong students who were assumed to be gang members. One young woman whose IE expressly stated that she did not respond well to yelling due to complex PTSD, predictably did not respond well when an SRO yelled at her in the cafeteria and then escalated to going hands-on with her, causing further trauma to an already traumatized youth. She tried to stand up for herself, but said no one would believe her due to her home life. I spoke with a parent whose son, while experiencing a grand mal seizure, was screamed at and accused of using drugs by his school's SRO. There's been much talk in recent years about making our schools equitable and trauma-informed. These students' experiences were not equitable, and they were certainly not trauma-informed. If the school district of La Crosse is going to talk the talk of equity and inclusion and trauma-informed practices, then the school district of La Crosse must also walk the walk. To close, I'm going to share a couple of excerpts from a statement that was published today by the La Crosse Area Showing Up for Racial Justice chapter, of which I am a founding member. I believe that these help paint a picture of the relationships with police that far too many La Crosse students bring with them to school.
30
The first
seconds
excerpt:
left.
For poor people and people of color, the presence of more police doesn't decrease anxiety, it increases it. Many students, predominantly but not exclusively students of color and poor students, have already had traumatic experiences with law enforcement by the time they're in school. We don't need to be creative thinkers to know why certain very predictable demographics of people feel more anxious and scared in the presence of police. Police carry guns. Police are people who arrest you or your parents or your neighbors. Police are people who took you to foster care. Police are people who can deport your dad. Police didn't help you when you were sexually assaulted. They may arrest you for the way you support your family. They're often present on the worst day of your young life, which you've just been reminded of in the middle of your school day. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Strebel. I believe that Mr. Corder is back with us. Or he was. Is he gone again?
It appears so. I'm wondering if he might have accidentally hung up again. I'm not sure.
Okay. Well, I believe we'll move on with our agenda.
It looks like he just joined back on.
Mr. Corder, are you with us? Mr. Corder.
He's on mute, but I believe he's my sole for.
Mr. Corder.
There should be an unmute button. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
It'll be at the bottom of the screen, kind of on the middle to left-hand side.
Is the admin able to take him off mute?
I'm not able to unmute people.
So, Mr. Corder, if you can hear me, you're muted and need to take yourself off of unmute.
I'm on. Here we go. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I can't. I'm not sure when you might have dropped off. So just as a quick reminder, public speakers are held to 5 minutes. Dr. Engel, the superintendent, will keep time. We ask that you state your name and your address for record. And you can begin.
I don't want to state my address. I don't want people to know where I live. I'm from La Crosse. Your secretary has my information where I live, but I don't want the public to know where I live. Is that okay? Everybody, a lot of people on that screen know where I live in La Crosse.
Yep. When you register as a public speaker, we do ask for your residential address, and that does get posted to the board agenda, just so that you are aware. So that is online, and so anyone that can access the board agenda can see that.
Okay, 2426 Hengel Court, La Crosse. And I'm Steve Corger. The most important thing for education to provide students and staff and visitors at each building is that every person is worth saving. We have to use every resource we have in the community to keep everybody safe. Just over a year ago, the national narrative was that we needed more police officers in the schools because of school shootings and murders that were happening in the schools around the country. They were talking about arming our school staff in case there was a school shooter. So this topic that we're discussing here, for me, I've worked at Longfellow for 5 years, and I interact with every kid in that school eventually during the whole year. My caseload is all over the place, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. I supervise lunch details. I see kids out in the community plenty of times. And the most important thing I have to say is, while we're trying to increase safety at schools, why would we take out the most essential piece of that protection? That's the La Crosse Police Department. So my coworkers, other teachers in the area, parents, and students have told me, since this whole thing's been going on for the last few weeks, they're just all asking the same question. Why would somebody take away that piece of safety?
I believe he just dropped out again. Oh, okay. Dr. Engel, have you've noted the time?
Yes, I have.
Okay, if he rejoins us, then we'll allow him the remainder of his time. In the meantime, we'll go ahead and work our way through the agenda. So the next item on the agenda is consent agenda announcements. Do you have any of those, Dr. Engel?
I believe Mr. White has one.
Okay.
Yes, you board, you will notice on the agenda tonight, we have several teacher hires and nurse hires, some resignations, but we also have 2 retirements. And as we typically do, we'd like to highlight those. Interestingly enough, both of these retiring individuals started with us in August of '94, within 1 day of each other. So that's sort of an oddity with our 2 people tonight. But our first one, Peng Lo, started in the district in August of '94 as a teacher assistant. And shortly thereafter, about 2-3 months later, he was hired and moved into a teacher position. Taught 26 years in the district. He's worked at Northwoods, Hinchin, Hamilton, and most recently at Lincoln and Longfellow. And one quote from his last evaluation from his supervisor said, "I have found him to be a very caring teacher, willing to go the extra mile for students and his colleagues." Again, what we look for in all of our staff. So we wish Peng the best. A second retirement on your agenda tonight is Rob Tybel, currently supervisor of many different things within the district. His title is long, but Rob started for us in August of '94 also as a teacher. He worked at Southern Bluffs, Longfellow, Spence, and Central. And then on July 1 of 2009, Rob was moved into an administrative position. He again has spent 26 years in the district. And I think Dr. Harsey would like to highlight a couple of accomplishments of Mr. Tybel's.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. White. Good evening, board members. I'll be brief tonight. Rob is 26 years in the district, but 33 years in public education. I've had the privilege of working very closely with him over the last decade or so of my time down here at Hogan. And just a couple other bullet points. So you've seen him at the board table, obviously, several times. But I would just highlight Rob's unending patience, and he is a tremendous collaborator. He's got a listen first approach when he's collaborating with folks, and what's so great about that is when he does speak, he's extremely sagacious gentleman, and his perspective is always very valuable. Then he parlays that into appropriately challenging our thinking on a lot of different areas, our practices, our policies, our approaches, and it has advanced our organization in myriad ways. And with Rob, good enough never is. And I've always appreciated that about his approach, and it always stems from personal accountability. Rob is always I'll go forward first kind of gentleman, extremely modest, extremely humble professional, and definitely a difference maker for our organization. And he's got a secret, and his secret is that he's got a wildly awesome sense of humor. I don't know if you know that about Rob, but he is an extremely funny person. And Rob, if you're out there listening, I just want to thank you for your years of service to the students, staff, and families of our school district. You would definitely be missed. I just wanted to point that out for our board and our public.
Thank you, Dr. Harsey. Anything else, Mr. White?
No, but thank you for the opportunity.
I make a motion to approve the items on the superintendent's consent agenda as presented.
Second.
I think that was Mr. Turner first. The consent agenda is a mechanism used by the board to deal with routine business that must come before the body. With a motion made by Ms. Como and seconded by Mr. Turner, the items on the consent agenda are approved as presented. Laura, if we can have a roll call vote, please.
Yes. Ms. Como?
Aye.
Mr. Jimenez?
Aye.
Ms. Leahy?
Aye.
Mr. Lee?
Aye.
Mr. Meyer?
Aye.
Mr. Korberg?
Aye.
Mr. Spivey?
Aye.
Mr. Turner?
Aye.
Dr. Cooper Stoll?
Aye. Okay, so next we have the approval of our board consent agenda.
I make a motion to approve the items on the board consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Okay, so a motion has been made by Ms. Como and seconded by Mr. Jimenez to approve the items on the board consent agenda as presented. We will have another roll call.
Ms. Como?
Aye.
Mr. Jimenez?
Aye.
Ms. Leahy?
Aye.
Mr. Lee?
Aye.
Mr. Meyer?
Aye.
Mr. Korberg?
Aye.
Mr. Spivey?
Aye.
Mr. Turner?
Aye.
Dr. Cooper Stoll?
Aye. Okay, so we will move down our agenda and begin with the formation of the Ad Hoc Fund 80 committee.
I make a motion to grant approval for the formation of the Ad Hoc Fund 80 committee.
Second.
I'm sorry, who was the second? Was that Mr. Spivey?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So a motion has been made by Ms. Como and seconded by Mr. Spivey to grant approval for the formation of the Ad Hoc Fund 80 committee. So I will open that for discussion.
This is Juan. I think that this is a very important committee, and I appreciate the people who have stepped up to serve on the committee. I would like to attend, but I can't guarantee that I would be there. That's why I did not step forward. But I really appreciate Ms. Como, Mr. Lee, and Mr. Spivey, and Dr. Cooper Stoll for stepping forward to serve on that committee.
Thank you, Mr. Jimenez. So board members, you have attached obviously to the agenda the charge for the committee and have had a chance to look over that. At the last board workshop, as Mr. Jimenez stated, I asked for folks to reach out to me if they were interested in serving. So if we approve the formation of the committee, then that will include Ms. Como, Mr. Spivey, Mr. Lee. I would serve primarily as convener, and I can say a couple of things about that after we move to see if there is approval. But are there any other questions or comments before we do take a roll call vote? So, Ms. Steigerwald, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes, Ms. Como,
Aye.
Mr. Jimenez,
Aye.
Ms. Leahy,
Aye.
Mr. Lee,
Aye.
Mr. Meyer,
Aye.
Mr. Korber,
Aye.
Mr. Spivey,
Aye.
Mr. Turner,
Aye.
Dr. Cooper Stoll.
Aye. So with the approval of the committee, primarily as convener, what I'm going to do is send an email out to the board. I will try to do that later tonight or in the morning and solicit questions that board members may have. Hopefully you've been thinking about this since it's been a few weeks since we opened that discussion and thinking about some of the important stakeholders that we want to include. I will ask for that information by the end of the week. That will be included in that email. And I will work with Ms. Steigerwald to choose a time for those on the committee to get together and meet. I know Dr. Engel wants to attend that as well. Hopefully we can do that sometime next week at the earliest. But you note on the charge that the committee should wrap up that work by July 27th. Okay. So the next thing that we'll move to is the annual academic standards notice.
I make a motion to adopt the Wisconsin academic standards in all discipline areas under section 118.31Ga1 of the state statutes for the 2020-21 school year.
Second.
A motion has been made by Ms. Como and seconded by Mr. Korberg to adopt the Wisconsin academic standards in all discipline areas under section 118.31Ga1 of the state statutes for the 2020-2021 school year. Is there any discussion? So we will have a roll call vote.
Ms. Como?
Aye.
Mr. Jimenez?
Aye.
Ms. Leahy?
Aye.
Mr. Lee?
Aye.
Mr. Meyer?
Aye.
Mr. Korberg?
Aye.
Ms. Ivy?
Aye.
Turner?
Aye.
Dr. Cooper Stoll?
Aye. All right, the next item we have is policy approval for first reading bylaws on board meetings.
Make a motion to grant the first reading approval for policy approval by bylaws board meetings.
Second.
A motion has been made by Ms. Como and seconded by Mr. Turner to grant first reading approval for policy approval to bylaws board meetings. Any discussion about that? Or I should say any additional discussion about that? Then we will have a roll call vote.
Ms. Como?
Aye.
Mr. Jimenez?
Aye.
Ms. Leahy?
Aye.
Mr. Lee?
Aye.
Mr. Meyer?
Aye.
Mr. Korberg?
Aye.
Mr. Spivey?
Aye.
Mr. Turner?
Aye.
Dr. Cooper Stoll?
Aye. Okay, so next on the agenda, we have the first reading for policy approval. That's going to be OE3, treatment of community stakeholders.
I make a motion to grant first reading approval to OE3, treatment of community stakeholders.
Second.
A motion has been made by Ms. Como and seconded by Mr. Colbert to grant first reading approval to OE3, treatment of community stakeholders. Is there any additional discussion about those policy changes? Then we will have a roll call vote.
Ms. Como?
Aye.
Mr. Jimenez?
Aye.
Ms. Leahy?
Aye.
Mr. Lee?
Aye.
Mr. Meyer?
Aye.
Mr. Korberg?
Aye.
Mr. Spivey?
Aye.
Mr. Turner?
Aye.
Dr. Cooper Stoll?
Aye. All right, next up, we've got policy approval, first reading OE4, personnel administration.
I make a motion to grant first reading approval to OE4, personnel administration.
Second.
Second.
A motion has been made by Ms. Como and I believe seconded by Mr. Korber to grant first reading approval to OE4, personnel administration. Is there any additional discussion about the changes to this policy? Then we will have a roll call vote.
Ms. Como?
Aye.
Mr. Jimenez?
Aye.
Ms. Leahy?
Aye.
Mr. Lee?
Aye.
Mr. Meyer?
Aye.
Mr. Korberg?
Aye.
Mr. Spivey?
Aye.
Mr. Turner?
Aye.
Dr. Cooper Stoll?
Aye. All right, next up, policy approval, first reading OE11 instructional program.
I make a motion to grant first reading approval to OE11 instructional program.
Second.
A motion has been made by Ms. Como and seconded by Mr. Turner to grant first reading approval to OE11 instructional program. Any additional discussion on those policy changes? All right, roll call vote.
Ms. Como?
Aye.
Mr. Jimenez?
Aye.
Ms. Leahy?
Aye.
Mr. Lee?
Aye.
Mr. Meyer?
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Korberg?
Aye.
Mr. Spivey?
Aye.
Mr. Turner?
Aye.
Dr. Cooper Stoll?
Aye. Okay, next up, we have policy approval, first reading R1 mega results.
I make a motion to grant first reading approval to R1 mega results.
Second.
A motion has been made by Ms. Como and seconded by Mr. Korberg to grant first reading approval to R1 mega results. Are there any questions about or discussion about changes there? All right, let's have a roll call vote.
Ms. Como?
Aye.
Mr. Jimenez?
Aye.
Ms. Leahy?
Aye.
Mr. Lee?
Aye.
Mr. Meyer?
Aye.
Mr. Korberg?
Aye.
Mr. Spivey?
Aye.
Mr. Turner?
Aye.
Dr. Cooper Stoll?
Aye. Okay, so next we have policy approval, first reading R2 academic performance.
I make a motion to grant first reading approval to R2 academic performance.
Second.
A motion has been made by Ms. Como and seconded by Mr. Korberg to grant first reading approval to R2 academic performance. Any further discussion about changes there? Okay. Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Como?
Aye.
Mr. Jimenez?
Aye.
Ms. Leahy?
Aye.
Mr. Lee?
Aye.
Mr. Meyer?
Aye.
Mr. Korberg?
Aye.
Mr. Spivey?
Aye.
Mr. Turner?
Aye.
Dr. Cooper Stoll?
Aye. Next up, we have policy approval, first reading R3 involves citizenship.
I make a motion to grant first reading approval to R3 involved citizenship.
Second.
A motion has been made by Ms. Como and seconded by Mr. Spivey to grant first reading approval to R3 involved citizenship. Is there any additional discussion about those changes? All right, we'll have a roll call vote.
Ms. Como?
Aye.
Mr. Jimenez?
Aye.
Ms. Leahy?
Aye.
Mr. Lee?
Aye.
Mr. Meyer?
Aye.
Mr. Korberg?
Aye.
Mr. Spivey?
Aye.
Mr. Turner?
Aye.
Dr. Cooper Stoll?
Aye. All right, finally, we've got approval of the 2020-2021 Board of Education meeting schedule.
I make a motion to approve the 2020-2021 Board of Education meeting schedule as presented.
Second.
A motion has been made by Ms. Como and seconded by Mr. Korberg to approve the 2020-2021 Board of Education meeting schedule as presented or revised. Any discussion about this? All right, we'll have a roll call vote.
Ms. Como?
Aye.
Mr. Jimenez?
Aye.
Ms. Leahy?
Aye.
Mr. Lee?
Aye.
Mr. Meyer?
Aye.
Mr. Korberg?
Aye.
Mr. Spivey?
Aye.
Mr. Turner?
Aye.
Dr. Cooper Stoll?
Aye. All right, folks, these will come forward once more for a second and final reading. We'll now move to the information section of the agenda and the 2020-2021 proposed budget, capital maintenance, and improvement projects. Mr. Ladina.
Yes, can you hear me? What I'd like to do is, this is the year of the first virtual meetings, and now the first virtual capital improvement presentation. So what I'd like to do is kind of take over the screen so you can see the presentation as I go, if that's all right.
Yep.
And if I do that, can you see the presentation?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. So I'll try this again. So share. Go back here. We did try this out this morning and it did work at that time. So. Oh, and I think I got it now. Probably good. Can you see it now?
Still a blank.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks for your patience here. And I thank you for the opportunity to share with you our capital improvement presentation. I know typically we do this in the spring, but due to unforeseen circumstances, we're a little later this year. As we go through this process, I want to encourage you to.
I'm sorry, Mr. Levine. I can't see the screen. It's blank on my end. Am I the only one seeing a dark screen?
Yeah, I can see it just fine.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I see a dark screen here, weirdly.
Oh, I apologize.
No, that's fine.
How's everybody? You know, if you go into the board docs, this is the exact same.
Yeah, I'll just go to YouTube. I'll go to YouTube. You can finish.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Is everyone else okay?
I can see it fine.
Okay.
I can see it.
I'll move forward here as we go. And please don't hesitate to interrupt and ask questions. We'll have opportunities at the end, but I know this is a little bit different than normal, so we'll just go forward. I just want to talk a little bit about the process. And I know some of you've heard this before, but this process really starts back in September, where I sit down and meet with every building principal and building engineer. We sit down together. We look at our current list of projects that have been identified in our capital improvement book. And the capital improvement book is actually the other document that I shared with you for this presentation. I won't be going through that, but that is available on our website. So for people to see, I think it's really important that we're transparent and that we know that the public can see what we're looking at for potential projects down the road. At those meetings, we discuss any potential new projects that have been identified. We prioritize projects for their school. If there's any new projects, I take them back. I estimate those new projects, the cost of those that have been identified. I include them in the capital improvement book, and then we add projects to that database that we have. We bring recommendations to the board, and then we start the design, specifications, and bid and management of those projects. And so many of those, we bring them forward to you. When we look at decision-making criteria, we look at safety and security of our schools. We look at, are there any new regulatory compliance issues that we need to address? We look at ways we can improve or maintain the learning environment. We consider priorities provided by individual building teams. My hope is when I meet with those principals and building engineers, they've had discussions with their own teams at their own schools, and then they may bring things forward as well. We consider operating costs. What does it improve operating costs? As you well know, our budget's only tighter than it's ever been before. And so we want to do projects where we can that will save the district money. And then we consider the level of community support. What I don't want to bring to you is any projects that I don't feel that the community would support. And so we look at the big picture. When we look at board facility initiatives, you have a lot out there that talks about our buildings, that talks about our structures, and talks about all of our sites. From mission statements to strategic goals, to strategic objectives, to a 10-year facility plan guidelines, and safety and security directives, or any other directive that the board may give us. A few years ago, the board gave us a safety and security directive that we're still implementing as we go and upgrading as we
as we see that the needs are. But I want to bring your attention to the long-range facility plan. It's something that we completed back in the June of 2016. And I really want to encourage the board, since we've completed that plan, we don't have a new one. I want to encourage the board and the superintendent and administration and buildings and grounds that become a priority for us. And I want to talk just a few minutes about what a long-range facility plan might look like. So what happens if you don't have a long-range plan in place? And I can tell you that it's constantly in a Band-Aid mode. We're looking at ways to fix things, but we don't have the long-range vision. We don't know what's going to happen in years to come. It doesn't allow us to spend the best use of our dollars. I'll give you an example. When we knew that we were going to build the Northside Elementary School, and that was the last piece of that long-range plan. When we knew that was going to happen, we had 2 schools that we knew we were going to take offline. And so by doing so, we knew that we could best use of our dollars. We weren't going to spend them in places that we knew the building was only going to be in use for 2 or 3 more years. And so it allowed us to look at that when it came time to identify projects and look at things. It allows for less structured methods to direct capital improvement expenditures. I know some people have suggested that my capital improvement book, because it lists $70 million worth of projects, that might be a long-range plan. And I will tell you, I believe that that's only a list of projects. It doesn't prioritize really the direction the district's going. And I think I don't know if the school board president remembers a conversation we had about a year ago, but I said there's really no magic one plan. It's whatever that we decide as a district, what that plan will look like. And so it gives us guidance to move forward. The challenge is develop and implement an educational facility plan that's systematic, informed, involves the community, and meets the needs of education into the future. And so that would be the goal, and that is the challenge. When we look at a long-range plan, what might that require? It requires all stakeholders' involvement in planning and decision-making in the process. I would love for the board to say, okay, Joe Ledvina, Buildings and Grounds, come up with a plan. But then it wouldn't be a district plan, it'd just be Joe Ledvina's plan. And so I think you have to include your stakeholders and get people involved. Development of a plan is not a one-meeting commitment. In other words, it's going to take time, input from others to find out what that plan looks like and the direction that the district's going in the future. It should be a living document that the board sees every year and looks at and said, okay, is this still the direction that we're going? It should be a part of the city county long-range vision. And when I say that, what I'm referring to is at least know what their long-range vision is for housing developments, for business development. And so we know what we're looking at when we look at continuing enrollment. The process looks at many aspects: demographics, building capacities, educational program, facility assessments, boundaries, and debt retirement. I think Patty can speak to this best, but in 2023, we have a lot of debt going off the books. It's a perfect time for us to look at some long-range needs, whether it's a new school or whether it's capital improvement projects, whatever it may be. If we're going to do that, we'd probably go to at least to the community in referendum in 2022 if the board wants to. So time is kind of the essence because it takes us some time to develop that plan. So I just want to encourage everyone to be on your radar as we start moving forward. We have a lot of things. I know you have a lot of priorities, but this is one I think that's really necessary as we move our district forward. So now I want to get to the district projects. Typically I do the district-wide projects last, but I wanted to talk about these first for one reason. We've put money in this capital improvement projects list for next year is COVID-19 upgrades in the amount of $421,000. As I told you, we started this process back in September. Back in September, we didn't know what COVID-19 wasn't even on the radar. But certainly it's driving us now in this time of day and age. And so what we're looking for is those upgrades. We've taken out some projects, and I'll share with those at the end, that we have money set aside for those upgrades that might be needed. In fact, starting this week, members from our department will be working with each principal, with the building nurses and the building engineer. We're going to walk each facility and identify needs. And so many of those needs may come from this project, any upgrades that may be needed. Paving maintenance, something that we do district-wide every year. Architectural engineering consulting, if the board comes to me and the superintendent comes to me, what about this project? What can we do? Is it possible? I use money for that to identify those things and see if it is possible. Environmental testing, that goes from anywhere from air quality testing to asbestos abatement and those issues. Security issues, $50,000, and I will tell you primarily that's replacing cameras. Our first cameras were put in 2010, and so most of that money is replacing cameras that are starting to be needed to be replaced. And then this year, energy management system. Our energy management system is critical to controlling airflow and temps in the building, but even more so with COVID-19, we may need to increase airflow into certain rooms, and upgrading our energy management system will allow us to do that. So when we look at district-wide projects, we were looking at about $627,000, or over half of the money that's allotted for capital improvements. But I do think it will give us some flexibility as we do the assessments in our buildings, what may be needed. And I'll give you an example. We have a couple of elementary schools that don't have washer and dryers in them. As we talk in terms of this COVID-19, that's one of the things with masks and other needs. There may be needs for us to launder clothes or masks in each facility. So there may be money taken through that. When we look at the individual schools, I just want to address those. At Central High School, we would be doing an elevator modernization at about $80,000. And so we have months. And so summer is the ideal time to do that. And so we'll be doing that. At Logan High School, we'll be adding a cooling coil to Air Handler 2. That really gets to the athletic offices and the training rooms and the locker rooms that currently don't have air conditioning in them. They would be the last rooms in the district that aren't air conditioned. If you recall, right now we had out for bid that the board approved this spring for air conditioning at the gym at the Sutton Gym at Central High School. So this would complete that process. At Logan Middle School, we would remodel the office for better traffic flow. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but if you look at the sign, what I have there, it kind of identifies what that would look like. As people would walk into the office, they would have the administrative assistants on both sides. This not only allows for better traffic flow, but also for security, but also for better customer service. So when they walk in the doors, they see a face directly in front of them as opposed to having to walk through the room to get back to them. And so that's what's happening there. Okay. Logan Middle School, what we would be doing is creating individual learning spaces, 4 individual learning spaces. Logan Middle School is the only middle school that doesn't have that, and so we'd be upgrading that. And then we'd be modernizing the elevator there. You may recall that last year we had 2 lightning strikes. One of them is at Logan Middle School that affected our elevator. And so the elevator was down for 4 days before we had to get parts flown in. So they're just more difficult to get, and it's really time to upgrade and modernize the elevator. Longfellow Middle School, we would create a special needs restroom up on the 2nd floor, and that's what's highlighted in yellow there. When I talk in terms of special needs restroom, it's accessible, but it also serves 2 purposes. It's a single restroom that anybody can use and just makes things a little bit easier. When we talk in terms of restroom upgrades, our facilities are old and they're very difficult to do and very expensive to do, but this allowed us to do that, really meet 2 needs with this. And so we'll be creating that in that space, and then creating an additional office space into a conference room. When we look at Hitchin Elementary School, we're looking at creating a special needs restroom. This is in the off the EVD room. Currently, we have 2 very small restrooms that don't allow us to be ADA accessible. And so we'll be tearing those out and allowing those to making those so they're accessible and really meeting the needs of our special needs students. At Hamilton, we'd move a kiln out of the art room into a closet that's down the hallway or right outside the door. This would be the last kiln that we've moved for safety reasons. We've never had an injury because of that, but it just makes sense when we look in terms of safety to move them out of the art rooms themselves. Southern Bluffs Elementary. If you look on the screen, I have my cursor down here. What we'd be doing is adding a fence, additional fencing to Southern Bluffs Elementary. You know, it's right along the Highway 35 there. We have some students who like to run, and they've gotten out of the current fencing, so we'd like to expand that fencing and just really keep our students safe. And a lot of times the students go outside that area and work as well. And so we want to separate the highway from our learning environment. We also are going to be removing a wall between rooms 112 and 113. This will allow us to give us a little bit more space. And with social distancing, it happens to be a good improvement. At Spence Elementary School, we're looking at replacing flooring in 5 classrooms, and they're identified there in the yellow. At Summit Elementary School, we'd be replacing a Bradley sink. A Bradley sink is down at the bottom there. It's a multi-hand washing sink. We'd be replacing that in one of the restrooms. And we'd also be replacing flooring in 2 rooms. At State Road Elementary, they have lost some whiteboard space because of the technology that we're doing. So we would add some more whiteboards into State Road Elementary classrooms. At our shop, many of you may not know that we have a shop, but we have a shop down at Isle of Plume. This is where we keep a lot of our things. This is where any extra furniture, anything that we have is stored there. This is where we operate out of for our grounds crew. We have a lot of PE equipment that's stored down there. In this mode of operation, last year we funded half that roof at $56,000. This year we're funding the rest of it, so it'll allow us to finish that roof all at once, and we'll be doing that soon to replace that roof. So when we look in terms of expenses and projects, the projects come to about $1 million, just under $2 million, and then a contingency of $18,000. And so that's where our funding is and located. What I'd like to share with you now, when we look at those COVID-19 projects, what did that, where did we get that $421,000? Well, we removed some things out of the capital improvement projects for this year. I told you we started in the fall, and these were all identified and were going to be a part of the projects that we were going to bring forward. And so now what we would do, if we don't spend all of that $421,000 on COVID-19 needs, then what we would do is we'd start implementing these back into that process. And so these are the projects that we would be looking at. Next, I'd like to share with you, and that kind of concludes the capital improvements, but I'd like to share with you, give you 2 updates. One on the Hamilton Elementary addition. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to change screens real quick, if that's okay. And it's not letting me, so I guess I'll have to stay with this screen. I wanted to go to a larger screen that showed this, but what you see in the gray is the existing part of the building that we're not doing any remodeling in. And then what you'll see in the maroon, or maybe not maroon, mauve may be the better color. What you see there is that's the current LMC, and that's where we'll be doing some remodeling. And then the yellow, all the yellow would be an addition to the school building. And so we'd be adding approximately 18,000 square feet into the building. So if we go through this and just kind of look, and if you can see on the screen, the mauve area, which is currently the LMC, what we have there is 3 classrooms, and then a computer lab, a collaborative area. So these classrooms could collaborate out here. Students could, working together. We see here a maker space. It would have a green screen, other areas where they could do projects, unique projects. We have a staff work area, and then a IT or information system area where we'd keep all of our servers. So that's that piece of the puzzle. If we look over here, obviously we have a gym addition, but next to that gym addition is the community space. The community space would have a kitchenette. It would also have some storage space with a washer and dryer here. Hamilton is the second school that does not have a washer dryer. And Summit is the first one. Hamilton's the second one, so we'd be including that here. And then what you have is a counseling area, a counsel where we would have social worker, the community social worker who's at Hamilton would be able to use this space during the day. We might have Gunderson Lutheran staff use this as well. You would enter through a secured entrance, and this is where the community social worker's office would be, as well as the Boys and Girls Club office. And then what we have a health room. And so this again, where Gunderson Lutheran staff may be, or we may have staff from St. Francis coming for the day to do student physicals or whatever it may be, and attached is a restroom and a shower to that. And so then you come over here to the other part of the addition. We needed a 4 classroom. So this is the 4th classroom here. And then next to that is the LMC. This process has been going on for a while, but I'm telling you now that we have a committee that's been put together. So Ben Burns, the principal, the community social worker has been involved, the Boys and Girls Club, the 4 teachers, the PE teacher, the LMC director, and teacher assistant. And then Ben has been communicating with staff. So it's been a lot of people included in the design of this project. And so we're moving forward with that. And I'll allow you to ask you some questions, but here's kind of the timeline. Right now we're in the design phase and we're starting to develop documents for bid documents to go out into the street. So this will be a bid project that we'll be putting out. So April through August, we hope to get this out on the street in bidding form by the end of July, beginning of August. And then when we get those bids out, they'll have approximately 3 weeks to submit those, and those are closed bids that come to our office. Then we will bring them forward to the board, hopefully in the middle of September, sometime the beginning, middle of September. We will start the addition in October of 2020. We will start the renovation, so we're not doing both at the same time. We'll do the additions first, and then we'll start the renovations that allow us to use the LMC and the computer lab that's there now until school gets out next year. And then we will start the renovation process in 2021. And then we hope to have substantial completion by the end of July 2021. It's a very aggressive timeline. We think it's doable. I would say on the back end, it's going to be close when we talk in terms of July 21. But I think we can do it. If we have a good winter, everything's possible. And we have good local contractors who will be bidding this project who will make it a priority. So I'm confident that we'll be ready when school starts next year. I want to also give you an update on La Crosse Polytechnical School. As you well know, we finally completed that project. The COVID-19 did set us back a little bit. We planned on moving into April 15th, and school wasn't going on at that time, but that was our plan to have it ready. We would have been, but once COVID-19 hit, we didn't have as many contractors working in the building as at once. And so we kind of limited the contractors there, so it spread out the work a little bit more. What I'm going to show you here is just some pictures, but I would encourage all of you. We have a building engineer who's there daily working, getting that building ready. We're moving things in there. You could go down there at any time during the day, and he would be more than happy to give you a tour. But more importantly, I'd love to give you a tour. So if you want an individual tour or as a group, I'd love to take you down there and show you what the project ended up like. And so what you see here is 2 spaces that the maker space on the right and the front of the building that we made ADA accessible. And then we have some before and afters. This top 2 pictures, the one on the left is the upper room. Now I will tell you these pictures don't do it justice on the front end, on the back end. On the front end, I will tell you the building was in really rough shape. On the back end, I can tell you it looks really nice. And these pictures probably don't do us justice. But this is upstairs. Every floor had a bar. And so what we did is we basically gutted that. We put on the right, you'll see a stage there. And so Polytechnic School, they do some presentations. They'll be able to do those from the stage. We think this is a room that the communities want to use. We have a small kitchenette to the right of there. And then when you go down to the basement, to the left is, if you remember, if you did the tour there, that's what the basement looked like. A little bit more grungy than you'll see here. But then on the right is what the current space looks like. Again, all of our spaces are designed to be flexible. So you'll see there that the electrical can be pulled down from the ceiling. We also have data that can be pulled down from the ceiling, even though it's wireless. And so they can really move, be flexible in this building. And then if you look to the next slide, to the left is some of the bathrooms that were there. They were really in pretty rough shape. You can't see that, but all the bathrooms look similar to the one on the right. They are all upgraded, and so ready to go. On the left, you'll see there was a bar area that they had, and on the right, we made it the science instructional area. And so they don't even look the same, but quite a transformation. I think that you'll like it if you take the opportunity to go through the tour. And so with that, I'd like to end it and ask you if you have any questions for me as it relates to what we just saw.
Thank you, Mr. Ledvina, for your presentation. It is exciting to see the work that's been done on what was the former brick house. While the pictures may not do it justice, we got a little bit of a taste of that when Superintendent Nelson did a video tour, but I'm sure it's nothing like what it is like to be there in person.
Mm-hmm.
But what we can see, it looks amazing. And I'm also excited to see that the work on Hamilton is starting to come together. It's such a great community partnership in terms of that work. So before there are any questions, I just wanted to thank you for your work, and things look really, really great.
Thank you very much. It's really the foresight of the board who's been visionary in deciding some of these projects, and I think it's going to do wonders for education in La Crosse. So I thank the board for their support. Our job is to implement your vision, and hopefully we've done that.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments for Mr. Ledvina?
Everything looks absolutely beautiful. Joe, thank you for your time and your effort on this.
Thank you very much.
This is Juan. I do have a
Mr. Ledvina, I want to thank you for your presentation and just thank you for keeping our schools top notch. I know I'm always impressed when I walk into our schools because I think they're well maintained. And as we all know, if we maintain things, we don't end up spending more money on the other end when things are left be. I'm really glad to see that there's some special needs restrooms being put into some of the buildings. I know when we've talked with students at the high schools, I know they're not going in those high schools, but I mean, I think there's a concern about that in some of our other buildings. So I'm glad those are being addressed. On the projects that are postponed, I kind of did a glance at those. There's only one that looks like it could be a safety issue, but I just want to ask you about the Northside Elementary, where it says we're not going to be replacing playground equipment fall zone. And I just want a little, I don't know that space and what that's like, and just a little, can you inform a little update on that?
Sure, thank you. That's a great question, actually. So when you look at the fall zone, it is a safety issue from the standpoint is you need to have a safe fall zone, and we currently do. What we have is we have the shredded rubber. And so what we found is that shredded rubber is the safest when it comes to having a fall zone because it's soft, but there's other issues with it. It's messy and it doesn't look good and it's carried everywhere and you have to constantly replace it. So what we did is we were going to be trialing some different things for fall zones because we put a lot of that shredded rubber out there. And so we wanted to start replacing that little by little. And that was the place there. So I assure you that the fall zone is still safe, but there are better products now that we want to start transitioning to as money permits us to do so.
Thank you. And other than that, it looks like the projects that we are postponing are things we'd like to have, but they don't look like they're immediate needs. So thank you for being conscious of the COVID-19 project and the works that you're going to be doing on there. And let's hope it all goes well and we'll be able to do some of these other projects. Thank you again.
Thank you. As we were looking at this COVID-19 came up, we thought, we don't know what the implications are going to be, and we know that money is tight. So if we could do that in the capital improvement process, the district would be better off financially if we could do that.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments for Mr. Ledvina?
Yes, I do. This is Juan. Joe, question for you. In terms of the COVID-19 upgrades, could you give us a couple of examples of what that means? I might have missed it in your presentation, and if I did, I apologize. But what are some things that you've got in mind that would fall under a COVID-19 upgrade?
Yeah, thank you. And And some of those we don't know yet because we're actually going to start this week in identifying needs at each school. But a good example would be washer and dryer in 2 schools that doesn't have a washer and dryer, because we know that there may be times when we have to wash clothes or wash masks and those things. Another example is isolation rooms. We know because of the COVID-19, the requirement to have isolation rooms. And so what that means is someone's sick, we need to put them in a room by themselves away from the regular health room. And so we don't know exactly what that's going to look like at each school. Where are those isolation rooms going to be? Do we need to put up a wall? Do we need to increase ventilation? Do we need those things? So that would be the primary area. The other thing is, in terms of COVID-19, is drinking fountains. We want to have bottle fillers as opposed to using the drinking fountain. And so we have bottle fillers in all of our schools, but we're probably going to need to add more bottle fillers. And so we'll shut off the drinking fountains, but we'll have bottles that they can fill. So it's expenses kind of like that we don't know exactly what those costs are going to be until we evaluate them with the nurse, with the principal. And so those are the things we're looking at doing.
I appreciate that. One thing I know that at least at Western we're looking at is trying to do what I'm going to call closed captioning. Or excuse me, not closed captioning, but a closed circuit. So you get 2 classrooms that are next to each other. Teacher and students are in one classroom, but in the classroom next door, there is a camera that is still showing what's going on, so that you can still have, say, 18 students learning the same thing that's going on from the teacher that is teaching in the one room. So I didn't know if maybe that is something that might be addressed. I know we're looking at what can we do to spread out our students if we have to limit the amount of population in a room. So good luck to you in terms of trying to figure out what we need to do, and I hope that we are able to get those things done with the budget that we have.
Thank you. And I know Patty has been looking at, there's some grants out there available to us, and so we're trying to get those as well. So hopefully we'll be able to solicit some of those that will help eliminate some of the costs through our capital improvements.
Thank you, Mr. Ledvina.
Thank you very much. Have a wonderful evening.
Thanks, you too. Okay, the next thing that we have on our agenda.
Lori, could I interrupt you really quick?
Of course you can.
I just wanted, is that okay? I have been emailing with both Joella and Steve, and Joella was inquiring, I guess she had a timer going, and it looked like she only had 3.5 minutes, and so she still had a couple paragraphs that she wanted to read, if it's okay if she joins back on the meeting. And then Steve also did send me a paragraph, and he asked if I could read for him.
I apologize. I had set my watch for 3 minutes and cut her off early. So sincerely apologize, and make sure I get it right next time.
Well, we seem to be having some challenges with public speakers for this evening, but we will work through it. Yeah, before we move to announcements, why don't we go ahead and do that? I don't have any problem. Do you want to, is Joella with us?
She's watching the live stream, so I told her to be on standby, so she should be joining pretty soon here. But if we're okay with me reading Steve's, I could read Steve's and then we'll watch for Joella. Is that all right?
That'd be perfect. Thank you, Laura.
Okay, sounds good. So this is from Steve Corger, and he did apologize. He kept losing the feed, and so he didn't want to disrupt the meeting anymore. So that's why he just sent it via email and asked that I read it on his behalf. So the paragraph is, it's in accordance to the WPI website. The La Crosse School District in the past 3 years, weapon violations have decreased and Black student incidents and suspensions have decreased. Therefore, the La Crosse School District staff building coverage and communication with students and visitors continue to display a positive outcome for student safety, which includes the SROs. Anyone that insists the 21 schools don't need SROs after this year need to speak to the students and staff at Longfellow Middle School, because after we complete an active threat shooter in the school drill, each classroom I have been in for the past 5 years, during that drill, the students overwhelmingly state to me and the teacher that they are glad the SRO is at the school protecting them. That is what we need to do to continue at schools to keep the students safe, because every life is worth saving. And that was that.
Yeah. Okay.
And I believe Joel is back.
Are you with us?
Yep, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thanks for letting me finish. So I had kind of shared a couple of different scenarios where young people may have interacted with police, and those are often potentially the worst day of a young person's life. And when we have officers present in school, that's a reminder for them in the middle of their school day. Naturally, this creates a high stress environment that limits learning and social development. A person in distress is simply not able to learn as well as a person who is feeling safe. For students privileged enough to not have these traumatic experiences in their lives by the time they're in school, police do not cause the same inner alarm bells to ring. On the contrary, more privileged students have likely been taught completely benign ideas about police and their families, if anything at all, ideas that cause them no distress in police presence. This embodied divergence of experience helps explain racial disparities in achievement and behavior. Sadly, it also explains the loneliness, isolation, and profound feeling that they don't belong, which many brave Black La Crosse School District alumni have shared about at recent protests and rallies. Having police in schools makes some white teachers, administrators, and families feel better, and they give the broader community the false impression that their mere presence automatically means schools are safer. If our schools are safer, it's because of the work done by social workers, counselors, mental health crisis providers, school nurses, crossing guards, and others, people who in many cases have been highly trained, who adhere to national standards of excellence, and who are often licensed and carry their own liability insurance as proof of their dedication to doing things the right way. We want to see our community reinvest dollars currently allocated for SROs to employ people with the same level of education and knowledge as the rest of the school staff. Thank you for your time this evening and for taking on this difficult and complicated discussion. I'm hopeful that the School District of La Crosse will make the transformation necessary to ensure that everyone, especially those most marginalized, can feel safe, included, and celebrated at school without the presence of armed officers. Thanks again for letting me finish.
Thank you, Ms. Grable.
Thank you. I apologize, Joella, for cutting you off.
Okay, so we'll move to announcements. Ms. Como, I believe you're first.
Actually, CISA 4, because of the holiday, was not last week. It's on Wednesday this week, so I do not have an update.
Okay, so we will then move to Mr. Korber.
Thank you, Lori. I only have one announcement, just so you know that the foundation is working on the grant program for equity, diversity, and inclusion. They're going to have some details finalized in early August so that teachers, administrators, students, staff may apply for grants to address some of the issues that are kind of happening in the country. And so the foundation is going to make sure that those can get going as soon as possible.
That's exciting news, Mr. Korber. Thank you. Okay, so I only have two things. One, just a reminder that we will have a board meeting next Monday. Was not originally scheduled. I'm going to guess Dr. Engel may speak to that in just a moment with regards to plans for opening schools. No action will be taken, but we would still like to have as many board members as possible. That would be 6 o'clock as usual. The second announcement I want to make is that this is the first official meeting with Dr. Engel as superintendent of the district, and we just want to say welcome aboard.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here.
Okay, so now, do you have some announcements for us?
I do. First off, I would like to say that in the 6 days I've been here, I've worked many days here prior to that, but I've been incredibly impressed with the staff I've encountered so far, the administrative team, just an incredible level of dedication and thoughtfulness goes into all of their work. It's been a real pleasure to be a part of this group so far, and I'm sure the honeymoon phase is still in effect, and I'll learn true natures soon enough. But it's been really great to transition in and be a part of such a great group. So really excited for the future and the incredible work we're going to do as we move forward. The two things that I have both relate to our meeting on the 13th. Speaking to our employees' dedication, normally by the end of June and early July, folks are taking vacations and they're getting away and they're not thinking about school. Well, this year with COVID-19 and thinking about a safe return to school, our administrators have been working tirelessly. Our teachers have been involved in numerous focus groups and building leadership team meetings, all putting together as best we can a plan for reopening. And next week, Monday, we'll have a draft to share with the board. It's still a work in progress, but we've been collaborating with area school districts and with the county health department to develop a plan that we can share with the community here in mid-July. And then we'll have a more detailed plan a couple weeks later that expands on those initial ideas. There's a lot to it. There's a lot to think about. And I'm, like I said, really proud of the work our folks have been doing and look forward to this next step. Along with that, we know that for a number of our families and our students, coming to school at all this next year is too great a risk, or their personal fears. We must be sensitive to and provide them a fully online option. The worst possible outcome is that we don't respond to those needs and our families seek that desired outcome in another school district, leaving us with a bunch of open enrollments out and taking public education dollars with them. And so kudos to Dr. Mike Lahucky, as well as the area curriculum and instruction administrators from Onalaska, Holmen, and West Salem. They've been working tirelessly to put together a Cooley Region Virtual Academy. A survey went out last week to solicit interest from families so we can get an idea of what attendance in that virtual academy might look like, because that will have impacts on staffing, curriculum materials, electronic devices, any number of things. But the end result is going to be an incredibly high quality virtual option for students in our school district with high quality teachers local to them. And so really excited about the work that they've done. To stand up something like this in a matter of 2 months is incredible. And I think the results are really going to benefit our community. So we'll have a better update for you on the 13th with that as well as an idea of how many families are going to be interested and what the secondary and tertiary effects of that attendance will look like. And once again, we're hoping by the end of that week to have a solid plan out to families after we pass the draft by you, so that they can start enrolling and we can start looking at teaching positions for those positions. So a lot of good updates next week, and much kudos to the folks that have been working tirelessly on those programs. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Engel. All right, next up we've got agenda planning. Can I get a motion to?
I make a motion to approve the July 20th, 2020 Board of Education agenda with any additions or corrections.
Second.
So a motion has been made by Ms. Como and seconded by Mr. Corber to approve the July 20th, 2020 Board of Education agenda with any additions or corrections. We're going to have a roll call vote.
Ms. Como? Thank you. Mr. Jimenez?
Aye.
Ms. Leahy?
Aye.
Mr. Lee?
Aye.
Mr. Meyer?
Aye.
Mr. Korberg?
Aye.
Mr. Spivey?
Aye.
Turner?
Aye.
Dr. Cooper Stoll?
Aye. Okay, next thing we have is board debriefing. Also, I just simply forgot to ask if there were any other announcements from board members. So we can fold that into the debriefing if you do have an.
Can it's not really an announcement, but I've been, I think I've only been on one or maybe two board meetings with Mr. Spivey at the table. And I just wanted to, and I was going to give him a shout out at the first one, but I think some technology, either I got cut off or he disappeared from the meeting or something. But Mr. Spivey probably doesn't know this, but he helped coach my son at Lincoln Middle School back in, I think, 7th grade for sure. And my son's Henry Meyer, Mr. Spivey, and I know you made a really big impression on him. I thought in my interactions, I introduced myself to you after football practice one day, but I was witnessing how you were interacting with all the kids, and it was just first class all the way, and you made a big impression on my son, and I know you made a big impression on his kids or his friends and other people at Lincoln. I thought it was disappointing when you left the district. I thought it was a loss for us. So when I saw your name come back as a potential board member, I was very happy to see you get engaged with us on that level. And I just want to give you a kudos and a shout out and hopefully educate fellow board members on your ability to impact lives at the middle school level in particular. So thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Any other announcements or comments for debriefing before we adjourn?
Yes, this is Juan. I attended the Coherent Governance 101 board development that was put forward by Dr. Eliopoulos from Chippewa Falls. Very good conversation. I think it was a good primer about coherent governance. I think the two most important things that I took away is that during the board debriefing, one of the main questions we should be asking ourselves is, did we spend enough time talking about students, right? Yeah. I think that's been more challenging given the pandemic that we've been in, plus it's also summer. So I don't know that we've really done that, but we should ask ourselves that question at the end of each meeting. The other one that I thought was very good is doing a 360 evaluation of every board member, which would include not only fellow board members, but also the administration. I think it's always good to get feedback from one another. It's the only way we grow. It's the only way we ensure that we are supporting one another and meeting the mission of the school district. So those would have been the best takeaways that I got from the meeting.
Thank you for sharing those, Mr. Jimenez. Any final thoughts? All right, then we're going to adjourn the meeting. Look for an email from me again tonight in the morning at the latest, and I'll see you virtually next Monday night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.